tuned into the motherfucking greatest.
He needs to leave football before football leaves him. You see, Jamie Carragher said those words about the once great defensive monster Casemiro. And as sad as it may be, maybe Jamie's actually right for once. From being the best defensive midfielder in the world to becoming a liability in a team as defensively trash as Manchester United, after committing a mistake that allowed bitter rivals Arsenal to squeeze out a win and getting absolutely ran through against Crystal Palace, of all teams, you have to think, this gave Arsenal a chance to win in the title race. Casemiro, you might have fell off. So in this video, we're gonna see what went wrong. Where did this guy go from? Because now he's having to defend himself in the media, and I don't think this is looking pretty. So think about it. What does Jamie said? Is it accurate? And if so, should Casemiro just leave the game behind? The fall off. Casemiro has fallen off a cliff this season. Bro has scored 4 goals in the Premier League last year and only 1 this year. His tackles per 90 minutes decreased from 3.7 to 1.4, and his interceptions per 90 have also fallen from 1.9 to 0.8. Additionally, his tackle success rate has reduced from 66.2% to 57.7%, and his overall WhoScored.com rating has declined from 7.17 to 6.87. I don't know, it looks like we're always having to revive him from the dead. Tell me why a Premier League's oldest star at 32 years old, only halfway into his 4-year deal, already looks finished already. Decline's been clear. It's really been evident for the last 2 weeks. Last 5 if we want to be real. Despite a somewhat competitive performance, Manchester United ultimately just allowed Arsenal to win. The 4-0 thrashing at Palace, which was bookended by goals, also looked like Casemiro was ran by horribly at fault. Left on his backside for the first goal. Bro, does any footballer spend more time on grass? And then he lost the ball for the 4th goal. And then, to put nails in the coffin, on Friday, when Brazil was giving their squad for the Copa America, he was dropped, and that was one of the first calling signs that it could be over for bro. We have to think about it and look at the past, because what went wrong? When youth academy stars are now playing ahead of you in midfield, when you're no longer established in the first team and you're getting attacked by all angles of British media, we have to sit back, take a step back, deep breath, and figure out what the fuck happened. And it can't be just the team that's surrounding him. Granted, he's been asked to play center back, which, as you may know, is very different from being a midfielder, but he's still being played out of position in a team that's riddled with injuries. Is that it? But fuck, it didn't start when Casemiro started playing center back, so I can't even use that as an excuse. In fact, since he's been playing the 6th position against Luton, Manchester United as well, he allowed 72 transitional opportunities. On average, while he was playing as a defensive midfielder for United this season, Casemiro got on average, dribble past 2.9 times per 90 minutes, basically an average of 3 times a game he was getting dribbled by a midfielder, compared to just 1.4 last year. This is absolutely ridiculous when you consider that this is the same guy who was man-marking Messi in El Clasicos and doing a damn good job back then. And to think he's also playing next to trash. And to think he's also playing next to trash, and that's not helping him at all. And to think he's not playing with the best midfield either, so that's definitely not helping. Another factor in what we see with Casemiro today is just how physically demanding the 6th position is in football. Perhaps the most physically demanding position you have to play in a game of football, just by the fact of how much ground you have to cover. Being a defensive midfielder, your job is to primarily cover the space, be a sort of free safety in that region, and also be a coordinator depending on what system you're in. So depending on how you fill that gap, that's all pivotal. In recent years, we've seen a lot of cases of defensive midfielders whose legs are just gone. They're not the same anymore. And especially if you rely on that physicality and shit to speed and that shit to cover the ground, oh my goodness, you're screwed. And once that speed is something in, all of it's extremely reliant on how much you can fill that gap. And in recent years, we've seen a lot of cases of defensive midfielders whose legs are just gone. They're not the same anymore. And especially if you rely on that physicality and that speed to cover the ground, once that speed is gone, you're just a turnstile in defense. It's just something that's happening to Fabinho at Liverpool in the 2022-23 season. And we have to remember, Casemiro, we're probably going to look at you as a huge liability now, so we got to ship you out of here. When you're an engine like Casemiro, whose entire super ability was to cover that much ground, your job is to endure the full 90 minutes and provide so much cover that this allows the more forward midfielders to progress the ball without ever even worrying about defensive responsibilities. And that's the thing, because we've seen in recent years just how useful that type of player is. Declan Rice changed Arsenal for the good and pushed Arsenal to only 2 points behind Man City. Fabinho lost his legs and it completely ruined a Liverpool title race. Over the course of the last 3 years, the sixth position's only getting more demanding in football. They're getting asked to do so much more, and in Casemiro's case, he's being asked to cover so much with a team so disorganized, so badly coached, that truthfully, he's gonna burn out even faster than this. But fuck his legs and fuck his engine. Bro, I just don't think he's moving as smart as a player as he should be at his age, which doesn't make sense, because whether you look at the experience, what he's won, and his pedigree, you would think that some of the mistakes Casemiro makes on a week-to-week basis should not even be happening. And I just don't know what you do with a guy like this. It's almost like you can't teach old dog new tricks. Yeah, many times it seems like Casemiro is the most rash motherfucker in this Manchester United team. His positioning is constantly wrong. His passing doesn't make sense, and often he seems like he's being rushed. He's diving into tackles and picking up silly fouls, all signs of a player who's lost his composure. And there are scenarios where midfielders age, but they're still able to provide useful depth and skills to their team. Look at Luka Modric, who's 36 and still a pivotal part of that Real Madrid team, making an absolutely daring run against Bayern Munich in that semifinal, which might have saved their Champions League run. You got guys like Jorginho at Arsenal, who despite not being known for his mobility, played a crucial role as a tempo controller and a calming midfield presence, not only at Arsenal, but at Chelsea, where they won a Champions League off this shit. There are ways for experienced midfielders to adapt and continue without having legs, but some people don't want to have this conversation. Since Casemiro couldn't cover ground, this is a huge problem for Manchester United right now, thinking that if he gets anywhere near that midfield, defensively, you're weak as hell. This is something that we saw with Fabinho last year, and that cannot happen again, as he cannot provide cover. As a result, more one-on-one situations for Trent Alexander-Arnold mean that Virgil van Dijk, at the time, has to cover a lot more ground. So think about it. If you're going to be exposed, Manchester United, are you going to be exposed all for a luxury player, it seems like at this point, and Casemiro? Or are you just gonna sell or let go? When you're going after players who are already proven, who've already accomplished everything there is to accomplish, you're gonna get a player who's really quality and who's gonna perform very well on your team. But the question is, for how long though? Real Madrid sold Casemiro for 70 million and say signed Tchouaméni for 40, and now they have their future set. They actually have an embarrassment of riches in midfield, while Man United are straight up struggling. Look at the talent ID and look at the scouting department. You should be able to trust your team to find players and to develop them and make them a mainstay part of your team going forward. But right now, this begs the question, what was Manchester United thinking to sign a player of his age at the tail end of his career for 70 million? Admittedly, he's been world-class at times, and even if we look into the first Ten Hag season, he's not been bad at all. He's actually been very good in the early stages. But right now, you're making the type of signings where you're at the right cusp of challenging for a title, you're needing a piece, and just because you threw the money around, Manchester United was in a full-on rebuild. That's something we forget about this Casemiro signing. They were in a full-on rebuild with the new manager in a season that had gone absolutely horrible the year before, in a disconnected locker room with aging stars and in a directionless place of play. Why the fuck would you sign Casemiro? This is the type of move you make if you have just finished second and you need to go for a title charge, which is something that United did when they signed Varane. Again, from Real Madrid when they finished second under Oli a couple of seasons ago. Then it was a really good signing. But this one, not so much. Kind of brings us to a crazy conclusion though. What do you do in a situation like this when you can quite clearly see the game slipping away from your fingers? Casemiro, make no doubt about it, was part of one of the greatest midfielders to ever exist in the game of football. I mean, he was a part of a midfield that won 5 Champions Leagues. That's enough for me. A midfield that could go toe-to-toe with any other at any point in history. When you've won 5 Champions Leagues, what are we debating here? But now the game has just passed him by. He got dribbled by 8 times against Crystal Palace. Yes, Crystal Palace. And at this point, you just have to ask yourself whether you want to keep fighting against the tide, or if you're Casemiro, just take a long, and I mean long, hard look in the mirror and realize that the game is leaving you behind, bud. I think personally that a man of your level, a man of your caliber should not waste your time in where you are right now. Go enjoy the MLS. Go enjoy an exotic country that's going to pay you more for realistically the amount of output you can put in right now. Go join a retirement league rather than being out here getting bruised, battered up on the grass again consistently and not staying on your feet. That is so frustrating, Casemiro, I might add. But more importantly, you could save your legacy and just move on from all of this. Because right now, time is your best friend and you really need to use it, Cas. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe and go crazy. You know the rest. I go by the name of Onyx. Goodbye.